Welcome to the Witchy and Wonky podcast, a space for spiritual raving baddies embodying all things music, manifestation, mindset, and magic. I'm your host, Rachel Brady, a digital vibe creator and storyteller who views festivals as portals, headbanging as healing, and raving as group therapy. Whether you're deep in your spiritual journey, reframing your subconscious beliefs, or just trying to figure things out, you're in the right place. Join me today as we lock in and get weird. Well, I did it. I finally sent it and I made the dang podcast. And I feel like a lot of people might see this as an impulsive decision if they are new to me. But I can guarantee you that this has been a long time coming. And one thing I've learned about myself when it comes to being a creative and intuitive person is when it comes to my creative projects and leaning into the intuitive nudge of starting them, the more narrow the gap between inspiration and execution, the clearer the channeling feels and resonates for whoever could benefit from it. And of course, this has nuance, you know what I mean? Like, I definitely have had moments where I immediately act on an idea and then I look back and be like, dang, I could have really let that, cook for a little bit longer. But for the most part, my digital content journey has been ongoing since 2016. And with the vision I have for expanding this community, I am learning to balance messy authenticity with discernment and strategy. And it is definitely a beautiful thing to be able to lean into my intuitive nudges, but also practice patience in letting those things expand and marinate. So when it comes to the podcast purpose, I want to set some expectations when it comes to the content and direction of this whole project. So there is a saying in the spiritual community, which is take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And I think using this sort of discernment in content consumption is also extremely important, especially when we are exposed to so many points of views and paths. It's very easy to incorporate this all or nothing approach, this sort of, well, if I don't 100% align with it, then it's not for me, or I can't take something away with it, or I can't identify with it. And I definitely have been there when it comes to immediately writing things off or dismissing them because I feel like, well, I'm not XYZ, so how could I relate to this? But here's the thing, this podcast is not meant to be an instruction manual or a sermon, nor is it me trying to tell you what to think or believe. And I hope that if you are interested in this podcast or you know me as a person, you already knew that. But I feel like, it's always nice to give a little disclaimer. I definitely like to think of it as a structured stream of consciousness, a channel of information flow that stems from my lived experience and what has resonated with my healing journey. And the beautiful thing too, and this is something that I've specifically observed with raving, is that you have all these people that upon first glance would not really, quote, fit into people's bubbles in the real world, but they have one frequency running through them that is this beautiful chord. And when it comes to being together in community, whether that's on the festival campgrounds or at a set, they are united through something that isn't tangible or set in some sort of status. And that really is my goal with the Witchy and Wonky community. We all stem from different paths, whether that is a spiritual path, a mental health path, I just love raving and it helps life feel worth living path. And no path is right or wrong or better or worse, it just is. And the one that you're on in this moment, in this singular point in time, is okay. Some episodes we're going to be silly, other times we're going to get in our feels, but each episode is a portal towards self-discovery and integration. I want you to see this as a conversation with your raving big sister, whether we're at the campsite, at the afters, or in the car ride to the festival, because honestly, those are some of my all-time favorite conversations that I have with my rave families, and I might even have some of them on for interviews, but that is for future Rachel to think about. So with that, let's get into the juicy lore drop. So I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of tricky for me to decide where I was even going to begin when it came to the lore drop, if you will, because I feel like I've already lived 1,000 lives and been 1,000 different people. For context, I just turned 33 in September, so I definitely have had my fair share of lore already. I really don't feel like trauma dumping and getting into the super dark, messy parts on this episode just because I feel like I've done so much healing since then, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. But at the same time, I feel like there is a time and a place for it, and right now is not that time nor place. But for context, I will say from 19 through 25 was really, really dark for me. A lot of trauma, a lot of just chaos, if you will. I used alcohol specifically as a really big coping mechanism for a lot of feelings of not belonging. I had a lot of really traumatic events happen where I used that as a coping mechanism as well. But I stopped drinking at 25 and I haven't drank since, which is absolutely incredible for me. I feel like if you told college Rachel that she wouldn't end up drinking for the rest of her life, she would absolutely be in disbelief, but I think she would also be so proud. And that is one thing that I really try to remember when it comes to looking back, because I feel like there are so many things that I was so ashamed about. A lot of my addiction and just lore was rooted in shame for such a long time. And I think it is so important to remember, if you are going through something similar or you have a similar thing where you have a past, is that shame can be alchemized into connection. It can be alchemized into peace. I definitely have moments where I am absolutely not perfect in the slightest, but I have that self-forgiveness and that self-compassion, and that is much more prevalent in my life now. So I will say, good job, Rachel. But when it comes to raving, I didn't actually go to my first festival, let alone rave, until I was 29. So it literally took me from 25 when I stopped drinking alcohol to 29, so 4 years, to really get comfortable with not drinking and feeling like I wasn't missing out. And so even though I hadn't discovered raving yet, I still am so grateful for this time because it was a time of recovery, obviously, from my alcohol addiction, and I was learning how to have a life that didn't center around feeling validated by drinking and partying. And so I lived in North Carolina at the time, so I was able to go rock climbing. I had been lifting since 18 or 19, but I was really able to lock in then. And it was really interesting because I didn't realize it at the time, but I was slowly beginning to realize, okay, this environment that I'm in, it is stable, which is what I obviously needed. But I am the person where if I start to notice that I'm really no longer aligning with the people around me, I start to get really antsy, and not in a way of, oh, I'm better than these people or worse than these people, but it was really, really beautiful. I was able to kind of have my first moments of, oh, I'm not taking this personally. It's just misalignment, because for the longest time, I mean, I've been bullied since literally preschool. So I have done so much unlearning when it comes to not, quote, vibing with people and not taking that personally, because for the longest time, I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought that if someone didn't like me or talked about me or XYZ, it was just because I was just such this awful person. And like I said, it was rooted in a lot of shame. So I was very grateful for my 25 through 29 time period. But then, lo and behold, in 2021, we move to England, and that is where the lore gets really juicy. Okay, so now we need to get into my relationship with dubstep and EDM, because I feel like a lot of people, whenever I tell them I started raving at 29, they're like, oh, so you got into EDM then? No. I was an OG bro step girly in high school. And I remember the first song I ever heard in high school was the remix of Pro Nails with Rusco. If you know, you know. And I was absolutely obsessed. So pretty much senior year through college, I loved bro step. I'm talking Skrillex, Knife Party, Flux Pavilion. Oh, obviously Zed's Dead. Excision. And it was so funny. I would literally listen to stuff while I studied. I have one memory. I was a freshman in college, so I must have been 18, 19. But for finals, I literally listened to the Skrillex remix of Levels by Witchy, which also, original Levels, absolute banger. But I literally listened to that on repeat while studying. Here's the thing, here's the kicker. I was surrounded by a lot of people that I was absolutely dying to impress, and these people I was absolutely dying to impress hated dubstep. They thought it was so weird, so cringe, so stupid. And so I was really embarrassed that I liked it. I remember specifically we were at a pregame and I was in charge of the aux cord and I played some dubstep song, and this other sorority girl came up to me and said, "Can you change it? I really don't like this song." And I was so mortified because it was my music. And so I think that really, like I said before, I was dealing with a lot of, struggles in wanting to be accepted and liked. So that really kind of humbled me. And it was really interesting because I feel like there was this kind of dormant period where it would be, in my playlist, but it wasn't, on the forefront of my mind, if you will. And then I started listening to more EDM centric songs as I learned that we were going to go to Ultra Europe in 2022, I believe. Yes. And so I was like, ooh, I'm going to go listen to more EDM because it's my first music festival and I want to just be, locked in. But I went to Ultra Europe and no shade, but I did not have a good time. I really wanted to dress up, so I got these super cute little rave outfits. No one dressed up. Everyone was so casual, and obviously a lot of European festivals are different in rave culture than American festivals. I am going to have a whole episode about that because I literally went from that to raving in 7 countries, and I absolutely loved it. So that will be a lore drop for another time. But case in point, I did not have a good time. So I was like, you know what? Maybe raving, it just isn't for me. I gave it a go, and it is what it is. And then that next year, I had the opportunity to go to Tomorrowland. And if you don't know what Tomorrowland is, it is the biggest festival in the world. It is absolutely iconic. It's in Belgium. And 2 of these girlfriends that I kind of knew but didn't, they were going, and it was a complete shot in the dark. I messaged them and said, "Hey, can I tag along with you?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course." And I didn't realize it at the time, but apparently it is absolutely impossible to get Tomorrowland tickets unless you are like absolutely locked in. And I literally was able to get mine in the gym parking lot just on a whim. So I truly, truly believe that it was divine intervention that I was meant to go because it ended up being my rave awakening. And it's always so funny telling people this, but I was on the rail for Sudden Death. And if you know who Sudden Death is, he is heavy, very metal centric. I also grew up on a lot of metal, so the metal to heavy dubstep pipeline is very real. But I was on the rail for Sudden Death, and I was around all these German metalheads who were the sweetest, sweetest people. And that was my, oh, I get it moment. That was the first time where I was in a quote party environment, but I felt so at peace. I felt so authentic. And so I literally went through 29 years of my life. And mind you, I had glimpses of this moment, but like that was the first time I felt so safe and so seen. And in a way, I'm very grateful that it happened a little bit later in life for me because I had so much clarity through the contrast. I had so many boxes I was trying to fit in before that obviously didn't get. And it was the first time that I had this moment of, oh, this is why nothing else worked out for me. This is why I never fit in, because this is where I belong. And I wish that for everyone, honestly. But I think a lot of ravers can kind of attest to that moment of when they felt like, oh my gosh, this is it. I get it. And so that was my rave awakening. And so ever since that Sudden Death set, I was full steam ahead. And it was actually really cool. I lived in England, like I said, so my home base was London, which, if you don't know, is the birthplace of dubstep. It is absolutely full of history, and it's really interesting because the American-based scene is relatively large, but the London-based scene is very small but mighty. It is absolutely like grassroots level, just pure, authentic, amazing vibes. And if you are ever in the London area and want to catch a bass show, I 1,000% recommend it. Like I said, I'll make a whole other episode about my experience with raving in Europe and London because I could talk for hours about it. But I ended up raving in London. I went to Amsterdam. I went to Belgium a few more times. I went to Hungary, Germany. It just took me everywhere. And it was one of those things where I got it. And the fact that I was able to be driven by it and find peace and community and accepting, like I said, I had never felt that before. And this was also a really cool exercise in solo travel and learning to trust the process, because before this, I thankfully had gotten very comfortable with solo travel. It was a very big muscle I had to learn how to use and get stronger in, obviously. But it was really cool because I knew that I would be able to meet people. I wasn't scared of feeling isolated or lonely. And of course, it's going to be different for everyone. But especially after having a very traumatic studying abroad experience in college, this was in a way very healing for me. And I always say now that I treat raving as a trust fall. And this was a huge component in strengthening that muscle. So with that, I moved back to the States at the end of May this year. I currently live in Vegas, and I was able to go to quite a few festivals and shows. Very fortunate. And that is where my spirituality and healing journey started to really blend in. So with that, let me give a little bit of background. I, in terms of spirituality, have always been very curious about it. I always grew up very intuitive. And like I said, I won't get super duper deep into everything about that just because it is a lifelong journey and I feel like I could talk about it for hours. But case in point, I've always been into manifestation. I specifically remember in Costco, I think I was a freshman in high school, so like 14, I picked up a book, The Secret, which is one of the OG kind of mainstream manifestation books, if you will. And I remember literally using it to manifest being able to switch high schools and make the varsity volleyball team then. So that was my first, real big manifestation, if you will. But I've always grown up knowing that there was something larger at work. I knew that there was something beyond me. But I think my biggest struggle was knowing if it was for me or against me, if that makes sense. And this was really prevalent in my kind of dark ages, if you will, the 19 through 25, mostly just throughout my 20s, to be totally honest. I had a very complicated relationship with spirituality because there were so many things where I felt like I was in survival mode. And I almost felt like if I tried to believe of anything outside myself, I would just be let down. I had a lot of issues with control and perfectionism, which makes total sense. I think especially when my life was really chaotic in my early 20s, I sort of let the pendulum swing the other way afterwards and became just absolutely, my nervous system was a wreck because I felt like anything that I couldn't control was a threat. And it was really stressful on my body and my mind. And so when I moved to England, it was actually really cool because since I had decentralized my recovery, and when I say that, I was still in recovery, but I wasn't making it my whole identity, if that makes sense. I knew that recovery was the foundation of my life, but I didn't make it my whole life. And I think it was very important for me to take it off this pedestal because I was able to kind of circle around to the concept of spirituality and healing and mental health on my own terms, because I think for a while there, I was so locked in from a very fear-based control perfectionism lens that when I took that pressure off, I was really able to allow the lessons, the resources, everything that has led me to the spiritual path that I am today to naturally, organically come to me. And I think in that regard, it is much more aligned because it didn't feel forced upon me. And so when I moved back to the States at the end of May this year, I currently live in Vegas, so it has been almost 6 months, which is absolutely wild. I was very fortunate to be able to attend quite a few festivals and shows, and this is when the spirituality and raving really came together. Because when I started raving, I absolutely made it a priority to make sure that I was never using it in a way that I used to use alcohol and partying. I think that there is a difference between raving to, let loose and escape, which obviously is so much fun and it's such a release, but it definitely can have the pendulum swing the other way where you are only using it as a coping mechanism to your detriment. And so I definitely had moments of spirituality, if you will. So like I said before, I treated raving like a trust fall and trusting the process, that it would somehow work out. So having that level of detachment, and I will create an episode about detachment and my festival experiences later. I'm really excited about that one. So there were bits and pieces, and it wasn't until I got back to the States that is when it really started to have the connections be much more intense. And it was really cool just because I started to kind of philosophize, if you will. And I started to have these, I call them downloads from the universe. People call them aha moments or insights, whatever you want to call them. I was starting to get so many of them during raves. It's actually really funny. It was during Beyond Wonderland at the Gorge, which if you've been there, it is absolutely stunning location. And it was during an Enzo set. And if you are a bass head like me, you know that Enzo, it is literally like going to a worship service. His music is so beautiful, so healing. And it was during an Enzo set that I just had all of these downloads, and I literally sat down on the floor. Thankfully, we were in like a grassy area, so like there was no one around. We were totally fine. But I literally had to sit down and just start typing in my notes app. And that is when the Witchy Wonky brand, I guess you could say, it's not even a brand, but just an embodiment. And I think that is why it feels so aligned and inspired and easy to talk about now, because it literally just all came together so organically. And that was sort of the aha moment I had during the Enzo set, where it was almost like a montage. That's the best way I can describe it, is as if the universe pulled back a veil and showed me every single thing in my life that had to happen in order for this moment to exist. And it happened infinitely and all at once. And if you've had a spiritual awakening like that, you might know what I'm talking about. But it's so funny because I tell people, oh yeah, one of my spiritual awakenings was literally during a dubstep set. And I think that there is a very tiny portion of people that get it. And I am at peace with that. And I feel like there's so many things now where I spent so much of my life trying to be accepted by the majority. And lo and behold, spoiler alert, if you try to be for everyone, you end up abandoning yourself. So the more authentic and aligned that I feel now, I almost expect not everyone to get it. And that is a-okay. So that is a little bit of the lore drop, if you will. Hopefully that makes sense, because like I said before, there were so many things that had to come together in order to bring us to this moment in time. And it's one of those things where like I said before, I had always known that in terms of having a voice for myself, creating content, all that stuff, if I felt like it was wreaking havoc on my nervous system, if it was coming from a place where it felt forced or just being someone that I wasn't, it was not going to succeed. And when I say succeed, I don't mean like a follower count or monetization, although I am very excited to build this brand and make it a business and a living. But the first thing is, if I feel like I'm abandoning myself, it is not worth it. Because I feel like success and abundance comes in many forms. But for me, the true success is having this resonate with someone who just wants to feel seen and heard. And like I said in the beginning of the podcast, that is what it is all about. To get quite vulnerable, because spoiler alert, that is going to happen probably along the podcast. When I moved to Las Vegas, I did not realize how lonely I was going to feel in my day-to-day life. And I feel like with the festivals and the shows and all these amazing people, I never want to discount that because I have already met so many amazing souls and I have so many members of my soul family. But in my day-to-day life, it is still difficult to make connections sometimes. And one of the things that has helped me in my day-to-day life is podcasts. I have so many podcasts where I listen to these voices that have kept a vision, they've been through the fire, they've stayed true to themselves, and you can hear it in their voices, you can hear it in their content. And I feel like digital creation is an energetic exchange, and that people can tell if you are trying to be something you're not. So when it comes to this, my biggest thing is helping people that resonate with me feel less alone. And if they are able to take what resonates, leave what doesn't, like I said, a little callback, and be able to integrate it into their daily life and their raving life, if they are a raver like me, that is the whole point. So I am so excited for you to be here, whether you are listening to this during its debut or you just happen to stumble upon this episode months, years down the road from now. I am so happy you're here. This has found you at the perfect moment. It has found you for a reason, and I am extremely honored to be a voice and hopefully an inspiration for you to live your most authentic and witchy and wonky life. Thank you guys so much once again for listening. If this resonated with you, I would love it if you shared this with a friend who might also resonate with it as well, or if you want to leave a 5-star review or follow me on my other socials. You can find me both on Instagram and TikTok under the handle Witchy and Wonky. And with that, I'm Rachel Brady, and see you on the other side.